Committee reports. Raton Water Works. Mayor Pro Tem Sagata or Commissioner Chavez?
The Water Board met on 9/17/17. The Raton Water operating, the Raton is operating on a Cimarron system for a while until around November 1st. The Raton Water Works and the city crew worked together to alleviate problems that were caused by the 2 inches of rain in 24 hours on September 28th. Thanks to the efforts by both public service, because public service was not affected. We approved 2 items for engineering service for the filter plant with engineering analytics. We approved a new lease agreement with the State of Colorado Wildlife Department on the leasing of Lake Dorothy property with the addition of the 300 acres of city property adjacent to the previous lease. Auditors were present in October and the review is complete, and we approved the finances for the past month to be put to the commission tonight, and good job to Geneva. That's all I have.
Okay. Raton Public Service. Commissioner Giacomo?
RPS board meeting was held September 25th, 2017. RPS Financial Officer Sandy Chavez presented the board the financial and statistical information which was approved by the board. RPS General Manager Robert Boot Walton reported to the board that the official commissioning of Unit 4 was completed on August 3rd, 2017. The unit number 4 has continued to be operated on the 7-day on, 7-day off schedule, with only a few minor problems which are being worked on and corrected, while still under the warranty requirements. Mr. Walton informed the board that Tom Hadaway from the plant operator was awarded or was hired or was awarded a new apprentice lineman position, and George Marcus has been hired to fill the plant operator position. Next RPS meeting is tomorrow night at 5:30. I'll be on.
Senior Citizens Board. Commissioner Chavez?
The Senior Citizen Board met this morning, October 24th. We discussed and acted on the FY17 audit. The Senior Citizen Center received the top-rated unmodified opinion, and we had an exit interview with Moy and Waters independent auditors, and this is a good job by the staff for them to get that clear. Oh, we also discussed and approved August and September financials.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Planning and Zoning Commission. Commissioner Schuster.
Planning and Zoning Commission met on October 19th. I have no report.
Okay. Housing Authority. Commissioner Schuster.
Housing Authority met October 17th at noon. Primary business was recognition of the Maxwell City Council or Town Council approved the Raton Housing Authority to assist them in managing housing in Maxwell. They are under audit at the current time. It is not, the pace of the audit is not really up to par, so they're hoping, crossing their fingers, that'll be done on time. And the contractor is working on the cabinets, however at a slower rate. They don't anticipate meeting the deadline for putting those cabinets in. Other than that, there's no business.
ETZ Zoning Commission. Mayor Pro Tem Sagata.
Have not met.
North Central New Mexico Economic Development District. No report. Library Advisory Board. Commissioner Giacomo.
There were no meetings conducted this month, so no report.
ETZ Zoning Authority. No report. Financial Advisory Board. Commissioner Chavez.
The Financial Advisory Board met on October 19th, 2017. We discussed and approved the FY18 first quarter financials to be presented to the City Commission this evening. That's it.
All right. Approval of the October 10th, 2017 regular commission meeting minutes.
After reviewing the minutes of that, and I find a correction, so I make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. This is a public hearing on the ordinance number 996, solid waste ordinance replacing and repealing all existing ordinances pertaining to solid waste. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, in ordinance number 996, we are repealing and replacing Chapter 50, although the bulk of the ordinance is similar or identical to what you see in Chapter 50 of the current Code of Ordinances. But there were numerous changes that prompted, instead of a revision to the existing ordinance, a replacement of that. And so just to try to summarize what those changes consist of, I would tell you that in the existing ordinance there are numerous references to the landfill, and generally the solid waste operation has been premised around a local landfill operation up until 2014. And so there were conflicts and references and passages that related to the landfill. Those have all been removed, and we really reflect that going forward we'll have an operation where we transfer solid waste and other types of waste to either a landfill, a recycling facility, or an appropriate facility for a special waste or a restricted waste. I would note that in the old ordinance there were some of the conflicts about placing bulky waste or specifically yard waste in alleys. In places in the existing ordinance it prohibited that, but in other places it described how you could do that, and that's been part of our problem. Clearly in Ordinance 996, placing any bulky waste, any yard waste, any refuse, any type of waste at all in the alley, street, public property, or private property is prohibited. That would be against the ordinance, and there is a penalty of up to $500 for a violation of the ordinance. As we've stated here many times, Mayor, it is especially burdensome on the public and on the Public Works crew to go around town and pick up a lot of the items that we see that are dumped in alleys or on streets. Those consist of furniture, mattresses, the yard waste, branches as we've talked about, appliances, all manner of waste. While there was some prohibitions of that in the old ordinance, it's very clear we've cleaned up the conflicts that is not allowable. And we will be looking to cite violations of that going forward in the future, and try to bring those cases to municipal court. But we would remind people that generally ratepayers of the city of Raton can bring most of those kind of wastes to our disposal facilities, and there's not a charge. If they are a ratepayer of our system, there is not a charge. And typically we see this type of disposal, it's not a property owner that disposes of it. The material is loaded in some kind of vehicle, taken to a place in town and dumped there. So we're close to the disposal facilities. It's easy enough to take them there. And we would ask the public for cooperation. I think this is key really to Raton, the revitalization of Raton, is let's clean up our community, and it really starts with controlling that waste. And I think every resident has a role in that and a responsibility to do their part. So we would ask the public's cooperation in that cleanup effort. Our definitions have changed. There were some antiquated terms in the old ordinance. We really changed some of the definitions to reflect some of the changes in the solid waste business and more modern terms there. So some changes on that. One of those is we had referenced decisions and management by the street superintendent We really changed that now to Public Works Director. Street Superintendent is not a position that the city of Raton has. Our structure has changed there. So certain decisions on how solid waste is managed and how fees are assessed are vested with the Public Works Director. So that's in the new ordinance. There's a section on waste ownership and responsibility, and it's basically a summary of what I just said, Mayor, that those wastes are the property of that generator until they are properly disposed of. So if it's municipal solid waste, that's your typical household garbage or typical commercial type of garbage. Correct disposal is place that in the container, the dumpster, and the lids have to be closed and secured. And that's a problem that we've had, is that lids, in some cases, not closed and secured, and specifically with the bear-proof dumpsters. And I know that there are people out there who say, if I leave that open, then I like seeing the bear come by and the bear can get some of that garbage to eat. But we have defeated the purpose of having a bear-proof dumpster, and that has been such a consistent problem in Raton, as you know, for decades, that the bear-proof dumpster is only effective if that generator does his part and closes that lid. So we're again asking for the cooperation of the public in that matter. As far as rates, we talked about rates last time, and I was asked to clarify the rate structure. There is one change, Mayor and Commission, that I would point out. Under the commercial schedule that you see, commercial rates, residential rates are not changed, commercial rates are not changed, but there is a minimum rate that goes from $25 to $36. So there are a number of ratepayers that have paid that minimum rate for commercial, and they would see that increase to $36. As well, we've noticed there is a really discrepancy with certain types of residential units, such as units in a trailer park or apartments, that may generate the same amount of solid waste as an individual residence, but it was not clear how those were billed. Under the existing ordinance, those will be billed at the residential rate. Each unit that's occupied will be billed at that rate. So we think in the interest of fairness that we'll clean up that question. I will hold up there, Mayor, and answer any questions that may come up.
Jason, do you need a cough drop?
I think I'm all right. Actually, I'll take one.
Here. Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
All right. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission on this issue?
Mayor, if I could make some additional comments, this is an ordinance that has gone through a number of steps, been in the commission a number of times, a number of requests for public comment and opportunities for the public to submit their comments or speak to the commission. On the agenda, we have action on this ordinance. That would be final action to adopt. We also have a resolution that follows that, which would address some additional solid waste rate schedules, and we'll talk about Resolution 2017-49 under item D. However, just to preface the action so that the commission is fully informed when they consider the adoption, or we do have comments, under that resolution we address fees on two specific types of waste: construction and demolition waste and scrap tires. And so there will be a rate schedule for construction and demolition waste and for scrap tires under that resolution, which may change from year to year. We would evaluate that, or it could change sooner than that. So that's brought to you by resolution. It's referenced in the ordinance, but we do want to bring those to the commission for evaluation, those types of waste as we go along. So that will come under item D.
Exactly. Deliberate and act on ordinance number 996, solid waste ordinance replacing and repealing all existing ordinance pertaining to solid waste.
Madam Mayor, make a motion to accept ordinance 996.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 996, solid waste ordinance, replacing and repealing all existing ordinance pertaining to solid waste. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Schuster,
Yes.
Commissioner Giacomo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sagata,
Yes.
Mayor Mims.
Yes, motion passes. Deliberate and act on resolution 2017-49, annual solid waste rate schedule. Mr. Berry?
Mayor and Commission, scrap tires and construction and demolition debris under the new ordinance 996 would be considered a restricted waste. It's definitely not a type of waste that is allowed to be put into dumpsters. And so how this is addressed, we have tried to detail in this resolution and the ordinance as well. There are lengthy descriptions of how the generator, what his responsibility is, and how that waste is to be handled and managed. But these two are specifically in the resolution and brought to the commission tonight because they have both been issues where there may be some unfairness we felt in the previous ordinance as far as how these costs were distributed among our ratepayers and the public. And so I've asked Public Works Director Jason Phillips to make a presentation to the commission on the extent of what we see and the issues that we have. So I'd call on Mr. Phillips.
Thank you. Mayor and Commission, as you can see with this resolution, we have established rates for both C&D and tires. Just a background to start with on tires. When I arrived here, we had placed an emphasis on getting rid of the large stockpile of tires. Through 2015 through present, we have disposed or recycled of 38,733 passenger car tires, 610 semi-truck tires at a cost of $60,000 plus $60,997.95. With that, the history of tires is that we had a landfill rate of $1 per tire, and just like our existing ordinance, a provision for a rate-paying member to bring 4 tires free of charge. And we have a mountain of tires. In addition to these 38,000 tires that we've disposed of, we probably have 12,000 on site that are a liability on the books that are going to cost us $36,000 to $40,000 to get rid of now. Going forward at this rate, you know, the $5, I would anticipate that you will hear some kickback on this. And I think it's kind of important to frame why it costs that. And if in our last request for quotes, our prices ranged from $225 a tire to $375 a tire. In previous times, even spending the $60,000, that doesn't account for any of the costs that we incurred. Those were the hard costs that we wrote a check for, not the hundreds of man hours that were spent bailing those tires in the past, the time spent manifesting, or the liability that being this tire broker is to the city of Raton. Part of our goal in solid waste is 100% regulatory compliance. It's very difficult to do in tires. Once a tire gets to your facility under the regs, you have a year clock ticking to get rid of it, and shockingly, not a lot of places want your tires. We've been fortunate to get rid of this many, but even in our last round when we spent the grant money, we had more city money budgeted to spend. They just didn't want to send a truck anymore to get them for that price. So we know going forward, if a tire makes it in a roll-off, ends up in Wagon Mountain, they're going to charge us $3.50. On top of that, we're going to pay somebody to transport it there, and we're going to pay the weight of the tipping fee. So the $5 is basically our way of saying there's a better way to handle tires. You know, when you ask for a price and you're the city of Raton or any other city, you don't get the best deal. There's a place for private business in this tire marketing that they could handle more efficiently than we can. But if we are your last resort and you come to us, it's gonna cost us $5 a tire on average, because we're gonna take 4 for free from a ratepayer. That has to be factored in here. And we have the $36,000 liability that we're gonna pay for out of ratepayer funds as it is. The larger tires are even harder to get rid of. We pay a higher price on the semi-truck size tire, and above that, the tires that we will no longer accept are almost impossible under our current vendor setup to get rid of. Large equipment tires, there's ways that people recycle those anyway that are probably better than them coming to our facility. People can use them for livestock, planters, things like that. But it's kind of a meet in the middle approach, and that's just kind of the cost of doing business. We're not, in the past I felt really our rates supplemented the tire distributors. This is a pass-through expense, and it's entirely possible, and I'd be happy to share any of my contacts with these folks, that they can get a better rate by going elsewhere. They could perhaps haul it to Wagon Mountain themselves, or to a tire distributor. A lot of tire distributors have a haul back program. They're bringing the tires in on a truck anyway. If they can take them back to wherever they originate from, they may be able to pay less than our rates. This is just what it costs for us to handle them and then pay the hard costs associated with them, and bear the burden of the possible notice of violation if we're not able to get rid of them in a 1-year time. Furthermore, a lot of this money on the tire recycling came through a recycle grant program. And as part of the application process, you're required to put together a tire program, and the program isn't really designed to pay for stockpile tires. It's designed to abate tire dumps and such. But they have given us probably in the neighborhood of $40,000 in funding in the last couple cycles to help abate our stockpile. But that came with the agreement that going forward our tile program would be self-sufficient, that we wouldn't come back asking for money, that we would change our rates and deal with this on our own without asking for state funds. So when you get the inevitable phone call from a tire shop, that's the thought process we went through to get to this price. To be honest, it's not a money maker. Someone's going to say, oh, you're just looking to make money. No. If not another tire came to the city of Raton and private enterprise took all of that revenue, we'd be better off for it. Much the same with CND. You know, we had put a moratorium on CND with the hailstorm because our rates tied to the ordinance that you just replaced were $10 a ton. We're paying $60 a ton to get rid of it. So if we had taken that, we were going to be upside down in a major way. So we put a moratorium on it. There was a lot of unhappy folks. They ended up going with a third-party service, stimulated business in our town. Everybody survived it. So we've come up with this rate, and what this rate does is accommodate somebody that just doesn't have enough C&D to warrant getting a roll-off or driving it to Wagon Mountain themselves. Your ordinance allows a certain amount of C&D for a residential user that's paying our rates. That just is kind of a cost of doing business. They pay the rate, we handle most of that. But if you have a project and say you're doing some roofing on a shed, you've got a half a load of shingles, 2 tons, maybe it doesn't make sense to go there or to rent a roll-off, we'll take it. It is not much better than breaking even. By the time you factor in the cost that we've paid for the roll-off, we've paid a contractor essentially $60 a ton to transport and tip it, and we've used city manpower and city equipment to compact that roller and do the other tasks associated with it, pull it out, replace it, and that we're going to eventually have to replace those roll-offs because they're worn. C&D is rough and they're already pretty beat up a couple years in. It's a fair price. We're not looking to make a fortune. Even though we're an enterprise fund and that's how we're set up, these are just basic rates that kind of cover what we're paying and what we have into it. And again, if you have a better option, we welcome you to do it. If you own a dump trailer and you want to take it to Wagon Mound or use a local roll-off company, that's great. But if you don't have another option, we've at least given you a way to get rid of your materials that is a fair price. So that's the logic that went into both of those 2 pricings. I believe we've kind of protected our ratepayers. We're making up some on tires for money that we didn't collect in the past. I mean, the $1 a tire was really cheap, but on top of that, when we were taking it by the ton or taking the 4 free, if you factor all that in, we were maybe getting 75 cents a tire, and we're gonna spend $3 plus to get rid of them. Also, some of the logic in this is people are not gonna always do the right things. We're gonna end up with tires that we're gonna eat the whole cost of disposal on. If they go into a dumpster, we pay $7 when it gets to Midway. If it goes into a roll-off, we pay $3.50 in wagon mount. We're not gonna collect any of that money. So it's not gonna generate a profit. We're gonna still probably be paying for this. We'll just be paying a little less than we were at the current time. And I'd stand for any questions if you all have any.
I'd just say that I know since I've been running the senior center, we go through tires. And we've been charged $4 to $12 per tire when we buy new tires as it is. So I can't see where their argument has a lot of.
I agree, it is a pass-through expense, and,
Right.
and to be honest, I think there was some profitability at our old rates that, you know, people probably did pretty well on tire disposal for a number of years.
Any other questions?
If I'm not mistaken, can't the tire distributors bring a trailer down here and they can dispose of it and they pay their own fees to send it back, since they do charge us?
They can, in my understanding, our last vendor was an Interwest Tire. They're across the Midwest and Western United States. They tell me in other communities, they get with a tire shop, they place a tire there as the trailer fills, they haul it out of that shop. And I would imagine their pricing is comparable to what I would pay without the markup for being a government agency. I think there's an option for everybody. In our last, most recent set of quotes for tire disposal, Jonathan Arthur was a very competitive bidder in it. So I think, you know, if anything, by us being this broker and middleman, we stunt private sector growth rather than support it. You know, a tire shop might say, well, you're being unfriendly, but you know, the role of government is to kind of get out of the way of private business, in my mind, if they can make a living doing it. And I think that there is a vendor to fill each of these needs that, you know, it was just more favorable to come to us because our antiquated rate structure made us too good of an offer to pass up.
Madam Mayor, I'd make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2017-49, the annual solid waste rate schedule.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2017-49, annual solid waste rate schedule. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on a mutual aid agreement between Raton Fire and Emergency Services and the Maxwell Fire Department. Mr. Berry?
Mayor and Commission, we do have a crew that is helping on a controlled burn on Romeo Park. So we have a number of guys up there, including the chief. So we don't have the chief available here tonight. This is a relatively straightforward mutual aid agreement. We do this typically annually with the municipalities in Colfax County. So this is an agreement that we have had in place in previous years, and we're here to renew it.
Make a motion to approve the mutual aid agreement.
I'll second.
Did anyone have any questions before we go ahead with the vote? No? We have a motion and a second to approve the mutual aid agreement between Raton Fire and Emergency Services and the Maxwell Fire Department. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on Resolution 2017-50, first quarter financial report.
Mayor and Commission, in your packet was the financial report, but you'll find that I've provided you with an amended report. There are some items, and we tried to give you kind of a breakdown of the amended agenda items that we have available for you this evening. So item F is our first quarter financial report. The report that was placed in your packet on Friday did not reflect the New Mexico Finance Authority statements, which we received on Monday. So I've updated the report to include the payments and interests for the Finance Authority for the month of September. So looking at the general fund, our ending cash balance as of September 30th was a little over 1.9 million, and then after we take into consideration our 1/12th reserve, we have available cash of 1,505,903.49. Our October gross receipts tax check, we are still showing a 3.3% increase year-to-date per what our budget projection is. And for the first quarter, overall, our general fund revenues are on target for the first quarter, as well as our expenditures are below budget, which is good considering that the first half of our insurance premiums were paid in this first quarter, and we also had 3 pay periods in the month of August. So, the first quarter report will be submitted to DFA no later than October 30th. Is there any questions that any of the commission has on the report?
I'll move to approve Resolution 2017-50, first quarter financial report.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2017-50, first quarter financial report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on Resolution 2017-51, budget adjustment number 3, fiscal year ending 18.
Mayor and Commission, also, this is a amended item in the documents that you received before the meeting. The budget adjustment, we did add a section for the fire fund just after consulting with our interim fire chief. We are going to reclassify some expenditures or available budget in the Troy Fire Station line item and allocate that towards the Station 1 renovation at our Clark Station. That's almost complete, but they still need to purchase some furniture and a few other interior items. So they're going to finish that project, and then we'll see once we get our second distribution from the State Fire Fund, kind of where they're at as far as available cash, and then we can look to see what monies are available towards the end of the year to finish up possibly some concrete work and some other items, small items that the Troy Station may still need. Other than that, you will see at a previous commission meeting, the commission did approve a $12,500 match for the Tiger 8 grant, and of course that will only be spent if they are successful in receiving that for the railway improvements, but we are going to stick that into the budget per your approval. That was Resolution 2017-47. And then also in the fire grants, we did receive some additional revenues for a wildland fire. Those came in July, and we're not in the budget, so we're going to allocate that revenue towards some various line items within the fire grants. And then under our capital projects fund, we'll be talking a little bit later this evening on the 2 airport projects that we have for taxiway A and D. These amounts reflect the actual bid amounts for those 2 projects. So I'm requesting adjustments on those as well.
Michael Ann, under special revenues, fire grants, the revenues, it was $5,000 and it went to $20,101. So the decrease figure is incorrect.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Okay, so what we'll need to do, hold on, I have my reports here. The increase is $20,101, so.
Right, so it'd be 15,101 increase.
It'll increase to 25,101. But let me,
No, 15.
well, hold on, let me.
She said the increase is supposed to be the 2101.
Yeah, the
So
increase,
this will
the
be-
available,
see.
the additional revenue available is 20,101, but let's double check that to be sure. So it should be, yes, it should be 25,101 is what it will increase to. So we're
Oh, I
increasing,
see what you're
yeah.
doing. Okay.
Yeah, so I have 20,101 additional revenue to allocate, so thank you for catching that. Was there anything else that you saw?
Make a motion to accept resolution number 2017-51, budget adjustment for the third fiscal year.
Second.
Did you second it? Yes, I did. We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2017-51, budget adjustment number 3, fiscal year 18, as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And I guess we'll take these other things up later. Deliberate and act on resolution 2017-52, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority to finance police department vehicles. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, we have in past years utilized law enforcement protection funds for various things regarding operation of our and capitalization of our police department. Typically, we talk about fire funds a lot too, and there is the similarly the fire fund for the fire side. But what we have done before is we have purchased police vehicles by leveraging some of the future law enforcement protection funds, and we recently completed debt service on police vehicles that were purchased, I believe, 4 years ago. Now, at last year's legislature, we made replacement of police vehicles a high priority, and of course there was no capital outlay, so nobody was funded, and we were not funded for that. And you know, it's speculation as to what kind of capital outlay would be available this year, but we do have now no debt regarding law enforcement protection funds, and we are proposing to buy 3 new police vehicles and finance those through New Mexico Finance Authority, which we would be, with your approval, submitting the application. You can see that the amount that we're asking for is about $90,000. That's a little under $30,000 for 3 police vehicles. We have, happy to announce that we are essentially fully staffed now in our police department. We have a couple of new hires that were coming on. We do have an employee that's doing National Guard duty, so not available to us. But with the additional staffing, vehicles are, again, important, and we are at the end of the life on some of our vehicles, as we've talked about here before. So we bring you this plan to finance 3 new vehicles.
Okay. When I was looking at this, maybe you can explain it to me. On page 2 of 3, it's under number C, if any debt being repaid from the revenue sources referenced in A, and it says no, but in A, we have checked law enforcement funds.
I think they're wanting to know if we currently have any law enforcement protection
Is that what
funds
that
pledged
Okay.
towards repayment.
Okay,
Meaning other
Others, yeah,
issues,
other
other
things.
debts, right?
And I
Okay.
think since we've paid off the current loan, that's why we said no.
no, okay. It just didn't look correct to me. And the law enforcement funds are pretty well guaranteed to be available?
Yes, ma'am, and we had heard the report from the Municipal League at the annual meeting in Clayton, where they report the outcome of the legislature. Now, there was some change from the legislature in fire funds and law enforcement protection funds, so there was some unknown during the summer and the fall of 2017. But those funds are in place for us to use for this purpose, and NMFA, we have met with them. They were in Raton where we talked specifically about that, and they guided us through the process. They are very familiar with those funds. They do finance many equipment and vehicle purchases for departments statewide, and so yes, we feel like that is a reliable source of repayment of the funds.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2017-52, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval of the New Mexico Finance Authority to finance police department vehicles.
I'll second.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could just add that will not fully finance the appropriation that we see. We would have some additional discretionary funds for other equipment purchases as well. So this does not fully leverage those funds.
Okay.
It would leverage a good portion of them, but there will be discretionary funds available for other things.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2017-52, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority to finance police vehicles. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on fiscal year 19 Juvenile Justice Grant Application Submission.
Mayor and Commission, this evening we present to you the FY19 grant for the Juvenile Justice Program, and we have Danielle Archuleta, our coordinator, with us here this evening. She pretty much has prepared this grant. She's most familiar with the programs, and I'll let her explain to you what we're requesting for the next fiscal year. But these programs this year, HRDA is our provider for those programs, and they're going very well, and they're actually serving a record number of youth. So I'll let her talk a little bit more about that and the application that we present to you this evening.
Thank you, Michael Ann. Good evening, Commissions. For FY19, because our numbers are very good at this point and are increasing every month, we are asking for requested funding for programs. Continuum monies will stay at the same amount that they were for FY18. For Girls Circle Preventative Program, we are requesting a total of $60,000, and amount funded in FY17 was $50,000. For Boys Council, we are requesting $50,000, and amount funded in FY17 was $25,000. And for Restorative Justice, we are requesting $15,000, and in FY17 it was $7,350. And we're looking at an increase overall of around $40,000 for programs. And the state has made some adjustments with the continuums. They want an administrative rate at 20% towards programs at an 80% rate, and we fall right in line with that. And CYFD has already done an interview with us, and they like the numbers, and they like the numbers that the city of Raton is currently serving. And they are actually very impressed with how much little monies we're using to serve the multitude of individuals that we are. We are serving Colfax and Union counties with this money, and right now we're being a resource and support system to our Raton Public Schools, and we're doing many preventative programs. We start in the high school next with 7th and 8th grade history class, and they will meet on Mondays for 8 weeks, and their half credit goes towards their history also, but it is helping with preventative and social competence skills. Is there any questions on FY19?
I did want to just point out, in the past several years, we have qualified for that administrative fee, which has covered part of the administration by our office. That is a change this year, and they have eliminated that fee. So we're no longer going to be eligible for the city to claim. This past fiscal year, we were getting $4,921. So they want to see more of the money going towards the programs and less administration, which is the reason for the change. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
I'm pretty impressed with your program. I think you're doing a pretty good job, and I think it's pretty well known that you're doing a good job.
Thank you, Ms. Schuster.
Mayor and Commission, and let me just add that if you are considering approval of this, if you could include in your motion authorization for the city manager to sign documents is the way it's set up.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve FY19 Juvenile Justice Grant application submission and approval of the city manager to sign documents.
I'll second it.
Any questions? We have a motion and a second to approve fiscal year 19 juvenile justice grant application. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on an MOU between the City of Raton and Colfax County Juvenile Justice Continuum Advisory Board.
Mayor and Commission, last year was the first year that we did this MOU, and CYFD expects us to continue every year with each grant cycle to enter into a memorandum of understanding, and this is actually between the City of Raton and our Colfax County Juvenile Justice Continuum Advisory Board. And so it references this year's current year grant agreement number and just kind of defines what the role of us being the fiscal agent and them as the board. So it's pretty straightforward. And the term of it is for the fiscal year, and then we would do another one if we're awarded the FY19 grant.
How does Union County then figure in? Are they part of this MOU then, or is that?
The grant funds all of the services provided within Colfax and Union counties.
Right,
And the City of Raton is the fiscal agent for those monies.
right. So do they have a representative
Oh.
to the Union County? Are they represented on the board?
No, they currently do not. I don't know, Danielle, do you want to mention who's on the board? Or?
Okay, yes, we have Steve Marcus from the DA as the president, Pat Walsh is the vice president, Sue Fleming is the secretary, and then we also have Duncan Ware, Raton High School principal, and additional to that, we have JPO supervisor Erica Meadows, Betty Cruz, and also Joyce Seville.
Very good. Sounds like a good board.
Do you have any vacancies?
Yes, 3 vacancies right now.
Very good.
Make a motion to approve MOU between the City of Raton and Colfax County Juvenile Justice Continuum Advisory Board.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the MOU between the City of Raton and Colfax County Juvenile Justice Continuum Advisory Board. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on fixed base operator agreement between the City of Raton and Express Aviation. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, Raton Municipal Airport is owned by the City of Raton, but as far as the operation of the airport, City of Raton does what many municipalities do. We have an agreement with a fixed base operator, and at the Raton Airport we have an excellent fixed base operator. Dusty is here. He is the main guy at the Raton Airport, and we are very lucky to have him and his crew. He's got a couple of other individuals that provide excellent service to the users of our airport, and they are all employees of Express Aviation. And so in the past, we have, you see in the documents there, we have transitioned from Pegasus Aviation to an assignment of that agreement, which was approved by the Commission in 2014 to Express Aviation. Now, providing these services at the airport, the fixed base operator tends to take a long-term view because they have an investment in equipment out there as well. There are a lot of elements to properly filling that role of fixed base operator, and Express Aviation has made that investment in the Raton Airport. They have expressed that they plan to be there long-term, and we've had a number of meetings with Express, and of course the president of Express is Bob Funk, who you all know well, and we have as a result of those discussions, brought to the Commission an amendment to that fixed base operator lease. Primarily, this would clarify some of the terms, and one of the important terms in the agreement is for fuel sales. So typically, users of our airport are looking to purchase fuel. Well, that's something, an important function that the fixed base operator performs. We have replaced the fuel facilities, but the fuel is purchased and dispensed by the fixed base operator, and that's really their incentive for filling that role. So the proposed first amendment to the lease agreement that you have in front of you would clarify some language, and it would state that Express Aviation will be the sole vendor of fuel at the Raton Airport, and of course we don't want any additional vendors or additional fuel facilities on the site. But there is the case occasionally, and I would reference maybe the time of the track fire, where a lot of aircraft might come in for a specific purpose, and they may bring some facilities of their own. In that case, they would pay a flow fee to the fixed base operator. So mostly what the amendment does is it clarifies that exclusive ability to dispense fuel, and additionally this would commence a 10-year agreement between the City of Raton and Express Aviation, and that would run through 2018. I mean 2028, excuse me. And Mayor and Commission, I would really strongly ask you for your approval of this amendment. We have a great situation there with Express Aviation, and we would sure like to see them continue to be our FBO.
So moved.
Make a motion to approve the fixed base operator agreement between the City of Raton and Express Aviation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve fixed base operator agreement between the City of Raton and Express Aviation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on Resolution 2017-53 SP-4-17 958 Fiscal Year 17 Cooperative Grant Agreement. Mr. Berry?
Mayor and Commission, these grant funds are through the New Mexico Department of Transportation Local Government Road Fund, and currently we have 3 ongoing grant agreements. So 2 of those are of the co-op agreement variety, and then we have one that's the municipal arterial program. So municipal arterial, we have designated for reconstruction of Hospital Drive. We're going through some of the engineering and environmental clearance currently. On the other co-op agreement, we have now about a year to implement those funds. And on the current, on the SP 417-958, that grant agreement would expire December 31st of 2017. So we have a short window on that. Originally, we had made some designations as to how we wanted to apply those funds, but we have a little more work to do. So we're going to ask the DOT to extend that for an additional year, and we'll bring that back to the commission for discussion of the street improvement plan. The work would be done on all 3 of these during the summer of 2018, but we would ask for a little more time in putting this together. The resolution that you would consider would be then sent to DOT for their consideration to grant the additional time.
I make a motion to approve resolution 2017-53 SP-4-17 958 FY17 cooperative agreement extension.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2017-53, SP-4-17, 958, fiscal year 17 cooperative agreement extension. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on City of Raton membership with the North Central New Mexico Economic Development District. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, you have a document from the Economic Development District, basically our local COG, and we have been a dues-paying member of this district for the long term, and there is an invoice in the amount of $1,377 for the City of Raton annual dues for fiscal year 17 and 18. And as a part of that, you do see a letter that details what the district does for the City of Raton in return. So it is a planning district. They offer technical assistance in grant applications such as CDBG or some of these USDA grants that we have been pursuing. And it's an arrangement that the City of Raton has been a member of long term.
Mr. Berry and Madam Mayor, I think I will abstain from this as they are also my funding source.
Okay. The only question I have is, how much do we pay to the municipal league?
That is a good question, Mayor. I'm not sure about dues. We pay a significant amount in the way of insurance premiums.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
And as far as the dues on municipal league, that's going to be a question I'm going to have to get back to you on. I'm not sure
Okay,
what
I wondered if it was.
the dues situation is.
Population based, correct?
I believe that's,
Yeah, I think it is.
each individual, so like the city clerk will get an invoice, the commissioners get an invoice. So I think it's more of a membership for each person.
So I think typically, if we have a member of the Environmental Quality Association or the Police Chiefs Association, there are dues for those. There are costs for attending conferences and
Yes.
trainings and things like that, and I'm not sure that there's really an annual due, but.
Yes, there is.
Is there? Okay.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
I was thinking
That's
there was.
from a
yeah.
director.
But you don't know what they are now.
It is,
It's based
it's
on your
based on
population.
population, but, and we are in the lower tier. But off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what the amount is.
I'll find that information, Mayor, and I'll distribute it to the commission.
Because they made a point at the conference saying all 103 communities were up to date with their dues this year.
Wow.
If I remember correctly.
That sounds right, I'm not on top of that one, but I'll get that information to you.
I'll make a motion to approve City of Raton membership with the North Central New Mexico Economic Development District.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the City of Raton membership with the North Central New Mexico Economic Development District. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on voting members for the Northeast Regional Transportation Planning and Organizing Committee. Mr. Berry?
Mayor and Commission, some years ago, the federal government through Federal Highway Administration put in place a requirement that states would form and conduct regional planning organizations in which local entities would participate, and they would have a voice in the planning of transportation in their region, in their area, and have a voice in the needs of the transportation needs in each individual region. The Regional Transportation Planning Organization is, the city has participated and been a member of that, as well as most municipalities and county governments in the Northeast region. This action here, they simply ask that the commission designate a voting delegate and a voting delegate alternate. In the past, the primary has been myself and the alternate has been Jason Phillips. And so we would propose to the commission that we renew the city manager as the primary vote and Jason Phillips, Public Works Director, as the voting alternate.
I'll move to approve the two of you.
Pardon?
I'll second that.
Yeah. I'll move to approve Mr. Berry and Jason Phillips as the
Voting delegates?
voting delegates.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve city managers Scott Berry and Public Works Director Jason Phillips as voting members of the Northeast Regional Transportation Planning and Organizing Committee. Mr. Berry being the primary and Jason being the alternate. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on grant amendment to agreement number RTN-17-02 between New Mexico DOT Aviation and the City of Raton for construction of taxiway A.
Mayor and Commission, in regard to the reconstruction of a portion of taxiway A at Raton Municipal Airport, the funding is a source of 90% Federal Aviation Administration, 5% New Mexico State Aviation, and 5% City of Raton. So that was originally premised on a total project amount of about $666,000, $600 being FAA funds. The issue that we have is we don't have a lot of contractors really interested in a project that size, so we received one bid, which the commission approved some months ago, and that's Northern Mountain Construction. Now, with the FAA funds, it doesn't really make sense, I guess, but it's kind of convenient that we submitted the application after we opened the bid and we know the amounts. So what we applied for actually was adjusted to $701,000 and some change of FAA money, and they approved that and sent that back, and the commission approved the FAA grant agreement at a past meeting. But item of business here is we need to ask the state of New Mexico to adjust their 5%. So that would increase from $33,000 and some change to $38,000 and some change for taxiway alpha.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Did you second? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you second it.
Yeah, I second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve grant amendment to agreement number RTN-17-02 between DOT Aviation and the City of Raton for construction of taxiway A. We have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Chavez?
Yes.
Commissioner Schuster?
Yes.
Commissioner Giacomo?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sagata?
Yes.
Mayor Matz?
Yes, motion passes. Deliberate and act on grant amendment to agreement number RTN-17-03 between New Mexico DOT Aviation and the City of Raton for construction of taxiway D. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, concurrent with the construction of the taxiway alpha project, there is also construction of a brand-new taxiway, that's taxiway Delta, which will connect our primary taxiway with the flight school. So that construction is underway currently. And again, we had one bidder on the project, Northern Mountain Construction, and the bid amounts were fairly high. So that was a bid that was considered by the commission and approved, contingent upon a negotiation to reduce the amount, which was done successfully. The amount was reduced, and within the guidelines of the commission, I believe that you had instructed that we get an $80,000 reduction in the construction amount, and I believe the construction amount was reduced over $100,000. So construction is underway. One thing that there are two differences between taxiway alpha and taxiway delta. Number one, there is no federal aviation money in taxiway delta. Is 90% state aviation and 10% the city of Raton, so that's one distinction. The other is in taxiway alpha, we are milling an existing asphalt surface and repaving that asphalt surface, but Delta is brand new construction. So when there is a significant amount of dirt work involved in taxiway alpha, and when we did the clearing and grubbing operation and subgrade preparation, we found that the soil out there had excessive moisture from the 5 inches of rain that we got earlier part of October or late September. So that creates a problem as far as paving on that subgrade. So what you see in the budget here is that we have requested from state aviation, and with their approval and with your approval now, to execute a $40,000 change order with the contractor. And what he would do for that money is essentially remove areas of subgrade that have excessive moisture, bring in select fill material, and replace that subgrade with select fill. So we estimate the cost of that at $40,000. We have asked for an amended grant agreement. We have had communications with state aviation on Alpha and Delta. They are agreeable to our request, and we ask for the commission's approval tonight at the dollars that you see.
I'll move to approve amendment to agreement number RTN-17-03 between NMDOT Aviation and the City of Raton for construction of taxiway D.
I'll second it.
We have a motion in 2 seconds to approve the grant amendment to agreement number RTN-17-03 between New Mexico DOT Aviation and the City of Raton for construction of taxiway D. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on an introduction of an ordinance adopting a supplemental municipal gross receipts tax provided for an election repealing ordinance in conflict herewith. Okay, Mr. Berry or?
Mayor and
Mr.
Commission,
Campbell?
we are talking about a special authorization for a 1 cent gross receipts tax that has been in place in Raton for what is approaching 40 years. And there is a provision for that ordinance to be repealed. So Mr. Campbell, General Manager of Raton Waterworks, and his staff, along with Michael Ann Antonucci, our treasurer, have been working on this ordinance to place this item on the ballot for the March election, and they have had communications with New Mexico Taxation and Revenue as far as proceeding with that. And Mr. Campbell is here to make his presentation in regard to the ordinance and the proposal for the gross receipts tax.
Mayor, Commission, this is a continuation, of the process. We started with a resolution of the Water Board, concurrence from the Financial Committee, and then a resolution from the City Commission. This is actually the step-by-step same process that took place in the early 1980s, from the 1981 to 82 timeframe, to go down this same road with the original tax. This is actually following the state statute. This language is very similar to what was adopted back then as the ordinance to put it on the ballot. There are some minor changes, there's some changes in here that completely put it in line with the current statute that's written by state statutes, which is what we're actually dealing with. As Mr. Berry addressed, Tax and Rev has already looked at this. We began moving this forward and addressed this. As you see, it's the same type of situation. It is actually a tax decrease from where we stand right now, because we would go to 3/4 cent from the 1 cent. So your gross receipts tax would actually lower beginning January 1, 2019. But at the same time, offering us the same competitive rates and the same quality system we've got to where we could use this on capital projects. It would go toward bonds, the bond reserves, and refunding bonds first, as it states in here in the state statute. It actually, that first project, the bonding project, would be to turn around and upgrade the Cimarron line, which is actually approaching 40 years old. At the same time, that has been our alternate source. Not truly an alternate through the recent drought. There's been times we've run on it as much as 9 months, and 6 months during the year of the track fire, where it was the principal supply after that event, until we made sure we had done our restoration efforts. It also assisted with the restoration efforts because the last item in there, after it's funded those other ones, is to only be spent on improvements of the municipal water system. So it would be based on only, as the current tax is, only on water, but it would be a reduction to 3/4 cent. This action, we will actually have a public hearing on the 14th, and then that would be for approval of this commission on the 28th. Then, and the same thing with the election. Approval at that point to put it on the ballot in March, which would actually be on the March 6th for election of the public, is how we move forward with this. Because the bonds will be paid off and the existing one will end January 1, 2019. So this is actually just that first step. Into next year would be where we would go into, if the public did pass this, would go it through back before this commission on a bonding ordinance and everything else with a bonding attorney as we move forward on any projects as we move and got those funds in place for the long-term future. This is just a step for one thing only, and that is to take and give the public their chance at a public hearing and everything else, to put it on the ballot. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Dan, in our meeting, you were having trouble getting in contact with Tax and Rev. It sounds like now you guys have worked that out.
We've actually got that forward. Michael Ann had some really good contact with them, and we actually are now, has been reviewed by their staff attorney. And we actually did put together a quick draft based on the other one and the statute, and then they've actually made some changes to it, and that's what's before you right now.
Dan, and it's only for water, not for sewer?
It's only for water.
Only for water.
The way the statute's written, it says for a water system improvements.
Okay, I thought that had been, when I sat on the water board, I thought that had been changed.
No, it actually, by statute, we can only do that, and what we actually currently do is it's spent only on water system. Now with that, we do spend it on reclaimed water, water that we bring back into town, and the only funds we do on the wastewater side are actually the water and sewer capital improvement, a separate fund that's set aside out of water revenues. That's why the sewer plant was actually built with some funds, and the only part of the sewer plant that's actually paid for out of those funds is the reclaimed filtration and portion that brings it back to town for reuse.
All right. And am I correct in saying we are going to have to do the improvements to the water line, whether this passes or not? Well, we'll still have to pass a bond, only we'll have to find a different revenue source.
Yes.
Which will be the ratepayers.
Which would be the ratepayers. What we would, these projects would have to be done, and whether it was in a step process or whatever, as we continue forward, just like every project that has been done in addition in the past, would have to come out of revenue, out of rates, and then into a capital improvement fund. That is the only way that we currently sit while treating surface water in the range of 30 to 35% below state average. And that's while being a small town and doing the most complex process, not treating well water, treating a surface water, and is because this funds our capital improvement process. We would continue on, just like we do on the current water treatment plant project, to pursue any funding assistance we can get. We actually, the current project we're working on for the water treatment plant is 1/3 federal funds. But anything else above that would have to be done out of your rate stream. So absent this in place, we would no longer be able to continue with the rates we have. It is even addressed in the franchise. When the tax supplemental gross receipts tax isn't in place, that we would be back before this commission to maintain water compliance with a rate increase.
And Mayor, I would add that some of you may have seen the article that was in the Taos New Mexican recently, the Taos News and some other news outlets that the New Mexico delegation had announced that Raton had put in place over $2.5 million in funding for renovation of the water treatment plant. As Dan has said, 2/3 of that will be loan funds that City of Raton will pay, but $800,000 of that is grant money, and that's coming from USDA, from federal government, and so Dan and his staff have done a great job, because $800,000 of free money is extremely difficult to find in today's world, but we will have to repay that debt over 40 years. So it will go to things like that, and as Dan capably stated, we'll raise rates to do that if we don't have this option. But the promise to Raton ratepayers was kept over the 40 years. Local rates were held very low, and when we see a lot of out-of-state travelers coming through town purchasing goods and services, that helps pay for our water system, where ratepayers, that's exclusively on the backs of our population. So we think it's a good strategy, and we look at going forward that way. But yes, these water system projects have got to go forward one way or the other. The renovation of the water treatment plant, that is due to two reasons, really. Obsolescence. The plant was originally constructed between 1946 and 1948, more than 70 years old. So we face that factor of obsolescence and regulation. And of course, regulation just gets more difficult. And Waterworks is required to keep up with the changing times. And so that requirement's going to be there either way.
And as we pass this through, whether it be to the traveling public, it keeps our rates low, but at the same time, there is an impact to that. Is our peak times in the summertime, we actually see that at water treatment. It's not only just the ones traveling through, but as you're staying in town, you go to restaurants, all that traffic actually uses water, so they're actually balancing that out and trying to not have it all be on the back of the ratepayer.
Has anyone done an actuary on how much the rates will go up, or, you know, so you have a money comparison?
I would typically say that we would try to turn around, and our original goal would be to increase it to state average and be back competitive with everybody else. So you'd be probably looking at anywhere in the range of a 25 to 30% rate increase. We would probably do some version of a step increase. That would be actually something presented to this commission, would go through the water board, would be a final vote of this commission. But I would actually say that would have to be the starting place that we would have to look at. Is there's a reason doing capital projects and staying ahead of the regulatory issues that everybody else is at that, and you have that average. We would be in that same situation. The only advantage we have on this, it's actually, we do use the 1 cent we currently have, this would then change it to 3/4. When we apply for a funding application and we show our rates are lower, we also show the reason that is Raton is doing their fair share at keeping their system in place, but we do the balance of it with a tax. Currently, the main two in the state doing that are us and Ruidoso. And from that same standpoint, absent that tax in place, that's an issue NMED would even look at, is that we make sure we have all the building blocks in place to stay ahead of the regulations. And I would actually say the starting point would probably have to be state average.
And Mayor, I would just add that comparison with past fiscal year, recent fiscal years, we would need to make up about $800,000 annually. That would be the equivalent of the 3/4 cent. My guess would be about $800,000 annually.
And how many ratepayers do we have?
We have about 3,500 meters, so.
I just want to be able to speak intelligently.
And actually, upon this first step in this commission, if you so choose to, we move forward with this introduction, we would also begin putting the steps in place as we go toward a ballot type issue to inform the public that this is coming to where they can make that decision.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, that was my next question, is how can we inform the public so they understand it's actually gonna be a 1/4% less?
We would actually begin, we actually have got, utilizing the city's, from a social media side, Facebook page, Waterworks has one. We'll actually also using news media, all our local organizations. We will actually do at least one mailer. We will actually even have some bulletins on their bills trying to tell everybody what's coming. And we would kind of begin putting that out there to get the word to everybody we can of what this is about. At that same time, it is a decision of the ratepayers. All we would do is from that side as a municipal utility and as the city is actually just give them the facts where they can make their own decision.
Exactly. And you said 800,000 annually.
Yes, Mayor. It's currently, and you can look at your financial report, which you see a revenue in the past fiscal year of $1.2 million, in excess of $1.2 million. We are talking about 3/4 of that. So if you multiplied that by the 3/4, and that was off the top of my head, if I'm
75.
wrong,
Yes.
yeah, about
Yeah,
75% of the 1.2
He's
million
an engineer.
is what we would make up that. But that's, if you look at this column under water,
Right.
that's what we're talking about. And the stipulation is that this is for capital improvements. There are not personnel costs assigned to that or operational costs. This is capital improvement fund.
No salaries. This is actually not your treatment process, your chemicals. This is just capital improvements to the system.
I just remember the battle
Yes.
40 years ago. Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve introduction of the ordinance adopting a supplemental municipal gross receipts tax providing for an election, repealing ordinances and the conflict with herewith.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the introduction of an ordinance adopting a supplemental municipal gross receipts tax, providing for an election, repealing ordinances in conflict herewith. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Chavez?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnston?
Yes.
Commissioner Schuster?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sedona?
Yes.
Mayor Mance?
Yes, motion passes. City manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. We talked about construction at the Raton Municipal Airport. We are 2 weeks into construction. besides the subgrade issue that we talked about, construction is going well, and the contractor is telling us that it's their goal to be done before Thanksgiving, so we would anticipate that. It's a very straightforward project, and we're not surprised by the subgrade issue, but we've been working on that for a couple of days, and it's coming in pretty well, so we feel good about that. There was a trial run of the digital film installation at the Shooter Theater last Friday. I was not able to attend, but those in attendance said that it looks great, and they tell me that between Shooter Restoration Board and Raton Main Street, they are planning a grand opening November 3rd, the evening of November 3rd, 2017, and there will be a blockbuster shown at the Shooter Theater, so we'd like to see everyone there. That's right, Thor will be playing at the Shooter Theater. And in the interest of time, I would tell you that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay.
Wow. Made Mr. Chairman.
You need a help break?
Yes, I do, before we go into, after we.
Yeah. We need a motion.
Yeah. I make a motion that we go into closed executive session pursuant to New Mexico SA 10-15-1H7, threatened or pending litigation.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into closed executive session pursuant NMSA 10-15-1H7, threatening or pending a litigation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll do that in, you need 5 minutes, 10 minutes?